Welkom. Welkom bij deze CIONET-sessie die wij gewoon lekker in het Engels gaan doen. Welkom op deze eigenlijk mooie, nou wat is het voor vandaag? Het is een beetje koud buiten. Het is de 7e, 6e, wat voor april is het, leven we eigenlijk? Ik zat dus 5 april.
Het is 5 april.
5 april. En het is welkom voor iedereen die ingelogd is. We gaan het hebben over cloud, data en security. And we'll change to English because we have an English guest, which is Get Roberts. But let me start with our other esteemed guest, which is Artie Debidien. You're a close friend of ours of CIONET, and you're more often here. Nevertheless, you're changing jobs. I know that you cannot tell all these things about you, but let me tell a little bit about yourself, who you are and where you come from and where are you going these days?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Artie Debidien. I'm a CIO for the past 20 years, or a little bit over 20 years. At this point in my career, I'm just a CIO advisor, a supervisory board member, and doing everything I love to do because I am, in fact, between jobs. But I've seen all the banks and insurance companies in the Netherlands and even abroad change things, optimize them, transformed, digitized, but also built from scratch. I think that's why I'm here.
I think so, because all CIOs have unique stories and unique journeys to make, I guess, but there's some commonalities they all encounter, which are, you know, the transformation into the cloud, probably cybersecurity issues and other kinds of trends. Today, we will talk about all these kinds of things a little bit and see where the conversation leads us. On my right side, I have Get Roberts. And I really need to read, Jed. You know, you're global head of HiTech operations and process excellence of Tata Consultancy services. What does that mean in terms of your daily life?
Okay, so there's one of me in every one of the vertical units that we have within TCS. So HiTech, finance, telecom, etc. And my job is very simple. My role is to assure that all of our customers, no matter whether they're big or small, $100 million a year or $1 million a year customers, get the same service. So the same level of quality, the same service throughout the globe. That's all I have to do every day.
And in that sense, because I'm trying to introduce all the people, like they have unique journeys to make and those kind of things. What kind of partner are you as Tata Consultancy Service? Are you helping companies to build their own innovation ecosystems, or what is that about? What is the view of TCS in this?
Is a huge organisation now. I mean,
there's how many people?
600,000.
600,000. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nearly as many as the entire city of Rotterdam. That's more than the country of Iceland, when you think about it, how it is. And so our services spread across the wide range of everything that you can think in IT. We cover somewhere, somehow, to that extent, and my job is to make sure all of those services are delivered to that quality. So whether it's in terms of operations, application maintenance, development, whether you use the methodologies, DevOps, SecDevOps, BizSec DevOps, all of these things we have to bring together to help our customers, people like Jonnes, people like DT. That's what we do for our living. Infrastructure, BPS, enterprise applications. That is the vast range, which you would expect in an organization that is that large.
And TCS is the reason that brought you to this country, or were you earlier?
No, I'm a traditional IT guy. So I started off as a programmer back when the PC was still a new idea. Yeah. And I all of a sudden feel very old
84.
When I say that. Yeah, 83, exactly.
Oh, really?
Really, yeah. And so I've got through programmer, team leader, project manager, so on. And then I end up in operations and process excellence, delivery excellence.
All right. Well, most welcome.
That's my story.
Most welcome. Jonnes Bouma. Jonnes, you work with ABN AMRO, correct? As head of IT transformation. And what goes by, you know, it's such an easy, you know, so many IT transformation or transformers in this country. But, you know, what is it in your view? What is IT transformation?
At this point for ABN AMRO, that's moving into a financial services cloud built on Azure technology. I deliberately say financial services cloud because simply buying it with your credit card does not suffice, at least from a regulatory perspective. So it's the move of our application estate to cloud, but also the transformation of our workforce towards DevOps, including upskilling on an infrastructure perspective. So it's I think IT transformation is here to stay, and also has been here for a while already. So in ABN we saw the transformation towards Agile. We now see it towards DevOps, but indeed the next thing you can already identify coming our way. So I think it's a thing to stay at this point. Again, focus on cloud and on DevOps.
All right. So for the agenda this afternoon, we will have a conversation. There's a number of people are online with us. I hope that they post questions through the chat. And if they really have a question or you voice their opinion, which is so strong, which I hope, of course, we will get them into the session here as well at the table. And
Ooh,
so
nice.
please put questions. We can put you on the screen. We can have you in this conversation. So please participate at home through chat or live. That's not an issue. I guess the guys of the technology guys there, they will take care of this. That should be possible. And about 10 to 5, we will try to have a breakout session where we split the audience and us a little bit in separate groups, and we discuss a certain dilemma, which I introduce later. The other thing you can do is, voting on polls. And Marita is introducing a couple of polls, and probably this is input for our discussion here as well. Well, to go on with this, like IT transformation, Artie, like in your view, is it, because he's mainly focusing on all kinds of, well, a little bit of technology and new services or whatever, but is the IT transformation, what is it in your view? To what extent is it business models? To what extent is it infrastructure? To what extent is it introducing multi-cloud kind of environments? How do you look at this?
Well, it's a little bit as I think you were heading towards that statement that transformation seems, or IT transformation seems like a container phrase. And what Jonnes did, he said deliberately what part of the disciplines and the practice within ABN AMRO he is transforming. That makes it so much more clear what he is doing at this moment. It's a little bit of you're changing the way of working, you're changing the way people work together. So DevOps has to do with ops and development combined in buckets to change their velocity, hopefully.
For the better?
For the better. Sometimes people forget to Jet, you know this. Historically, we didn't restore the backups, but we did backups. Mm-hmm. And in the new era, we change ways of working, but we don't measure the new velocity. This hopefully for the better. But you could transform, rightly said, so many parts, so many practices, so many disciplines, so many parts of your architecture within IT and on the alignment between business and IT, and even business processes or the way you work. For instance, automation of process management will be called IT transformation if you're doing the job.
All right, yeah, because you can also have the view like it's from infrastructure to data, whatever. Yet, because they are predominantly working in one organization, mm-hmm. you will be confronted with many different organizations. Who drives IT transformation in most companies?
I think it is a very wide range. So the question is what we can do from an IT perspective is make capability known to you or to our customers. So with all of our customers, it doesn't really matter then whether they're a technology sector or a communication sector or finance sector, is our job, I think we see our job as part of a TCS is to take you on this journey. So we say, okay, look, this is all the new stuff that we're doing. Is this interesting for you? And then there's the contextualization of all of that information to say, well, actually, well, no, that's not for us, but this might be for us. And this is a continuous journey, and it starts, you know, from the very first day we start a relationship with a customer. It's all about how can we help you do more. You know, that's how we make our money. I mean, it's very, very simple. So if we can enable you to do more, then you will enable us to work more for you. And I think that continuous journey starts from, do I know my customer? Do I know, you know, what's the context? What's the business that you're in? Do I know that? How do I bring from other customers in that business good ideas to your table so you can say, actually, this looks like a good trend. It's like when we started off with cloud all those years ago. Why is cloud a good idea? You know, so of course you can say, okay, we've got scalability, we've got flexibility, we can go up, we can go down. With that, though, comes all the challenges you have with cloud. You know, how many people actually switch machines off? No one switches anything off these days. Everything is all plugged in. But we see with a lot of our customers, the costs spiraling out of control because they've left on these great big heavy machines and they're sitting there doing nothing. You know, we've seen this, bringing this in there with them. Do you actually need 10 terabytes to store your Excel? No, you don't need 10 terabytes to store your Excel. How do you operationalize and look at excellence in terms of your virtual machines? You know, people said they'll have virtual machines for everything, but all of a sudden I only actually need one virtual machine which can handle a few things. So our job is to bring, in my view, is to bring these ideas to the company. This is how you run, for example, in the cloud, operational excellence. These are the best practices.
But are you rationalizing a lot?
Definitely, yeah. So we have the ambition to move from an application estate of roughly 1,500 applications, which we have in our on-premise setup, to say 600-700. So that's quite a drastic rationalization of, at least in numbers. Also from a product service to our customers, to our end customers, we are also rationalizing. That's not driven from the IT transformation perspective. That's of course driven from our business portfolio perspective. But you see also new technology helps us enable identifying a product once and then adding a flavor of that product or adding a flavor to that product without having to invent sort of a new product. So for instance, an account, the vehicle of an account, you can sell as a student account and as a account for a pair that marries or for yourself.
Joint account.
Joint account, so you have different flavors of an account. In the old days, we used to build for everything a new product. I think technology and rationalizing in your, both in your product as well as in your application landscape also helps you leverage technology to build a product once and then add a nice flavor to it so that you can contain all the maintenance work that you have to do on an account. All the regulatory requirements that come in that you need to implement, you can do on one product rather than on many, many products. So
yeah, well, it sounds healthy that external influences changes your business in terms of, okay, if there is a business request or there's a compliance or a regulatory obligation to change something, you are working on it. But is it, what about your team then? Do you have the right persons? Do you have that, or do you call upon a TCS or some other partners to address all those new needs? What is your view there?
Well, ABN AMRO has in 2010 chosen to do large-scale outsourcing, and we've signed large contracts, amongst others, with TCS, a contract that we still are very happy with and that we still maintain. We have adjusted and started hiring internal staff a bit more because we felt the balance was a bit off. But we have a continued outlook to indeed work with large partners and also with some smaller niche partners that really have a key factor in a specific area. So that's a sort of a continued journey, but we are rebalancing a little bit how we position our workforce, and very important in adoption of new technologies, of course, the upskilling, reskilling of your staff, both at the internal side, but the curricula that we have defined, we also request from our large partnerships to also engage in that same journey and ensure that the skill level of their staff is coherently goes up with our own staff.
What is your feeling, Artie, in the organization you've been working? you know, the cloud is coming, they're like you want to develop something, you have DevOps teams and all kinds of stuff. Are most Dutch companies up to their job in terms of skills?
Well, if I may say so, I mean, AMRO is a little bit late because this is a known evolution, and I think the challenges ABN AMRO had made it so that you had to, how do you say, get the house in order first and then build upon it. But this is a known journey. All the banks went through this, rationalizing your products towards your client, rationalizing processes, also giving some space for RegTech, because compliance in FS is a huge headache file for all the banks, I think. So this is known what you're going to do. In the same year when ABN AMRO outsourced towards was doing outsourcing, we were building in the midst of the financial crisis. It was 2010, a new bank for Aegon in the Netherlands. Because we felt like when banks were under fire and the whole reputation of banks was under a lot of scrutiny, let's build a bank. I'm not sure if that was a good time to do it, but because it was very challenging. Let's build a bank, complete new, from scratch, that already had rationalized product, already thought to differentiate in the front end, and to build a very nimble mid-end and try to have a cloud. By that time, in 2010, the Dutch National Bank didn't allow banks to really go into public cloud. I'm not sure if you remember, but it was Nelly Kroes at that time that had that law in place and that regulation. But with the cooperation of the Dutch National Bank, we tried to re-platform back-end systems and get it in a private cloud setup. So I am very familiar with the journey ABN AMRO is embarking on now, and I think now it's maybe it has a lot of complexity, because changing the way you are working on that scale. Also, the longer you wait, the more complex the products get. I'm not sure if you recognize that, so it's a huge mountain to climb, I think. Yeah, I recognize this completely.
I do want to respond to the late part a little bit.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, of course, go for it.
Go.
So, I definitely want to acknowledge that we had some internal struggles. Some events happened around the bank, making it join with Fortis.
Fully agree.
Rebuilding stuff, having to separate stuff. That was not an easy period, and it also led, I think, to a lot of internal focus rather than indeed to create your roadmaps on what your customer needs at that point in time. I think, on the other hand, if you look at the situation now, the immense move that we make towards a full adoption of Azure Cloud, I think that is
moving ahead.
Wet van de remmende voorsprong kind of which comes up, and I think there we are sort of catching up. But I recognize some of the
I fully agree. It was not my intention to point that out. And in all fairness, also ABN AMRO built Moneyou that time as a 100% subsidiary of ABN AMRO, which was a new fully digital mortgage bank they had and retail bank they had. So it was not a bad intention. But I can imagine the longer you wait, the bigger the change is. If you understand from a technological perspective, and also for the risk appetite perspective towards your colleagues, the longer you wait with the change, the tougher it gets.
But having said all these kind of things, transformation is all over the place. We are talking about for 10 years about transformation, whether it is the one a little bit earlier or and the question here is, does it ever end? Is there a moment in time you can point like, now the transformation is over and let's go back to normal business, or is it a continuous process forever?
It's a continuous process.
Continuous process. I hope it never ends.
Yeah, but nevertheless, like here's like, when are we finally transformed?
But my view is you don't have a future state. You have a next state.
Yeah.
And I think that goes for your workforce, that goes for your application estate, that goes for your infrastructure, that goes all over. Technology is moving rapidly, and you need to catch up. And every big leap demands for a next transformation. So it's a continued.
The staff development, as you say, is probably one of the biggest areas where we all have to focus. And I completely agree with the approach that we take that with a lot of our customers is, so what's the technologies that you're focusing on? So if you're focusing on Azure, you're focusing on X and Y, then, you know, as a service provider and a partner to you, it's our job to make sure that we're aligned with that route. Now, that will be different for different customers. Other customers may say, well, no, we're going all GCP. Okay, we'll go GCP. We're doing pure AI and ML. That's all we want to focus on. Well, that's also okay. But that challenge on us as well as all of our staff is, do I understand the technology? Do I know what this technology means for my customers? And tomorrow there'll be something new. And so what we're seeing is, how do you drive that culture of continuous learning for everybody? And it's not just your most junior people, like your junior devs and your graduates. It's, what have you learned in the last year, Jed? What have you learned in the next, and what are you going to be learning in the next 5 years? So how do you bring this to your customers as well, the same culture and the same mindset that, yeah, like the gentleman who asked, or the lady who asked the question there, is this is a continuous journey. And it continues from people, process, technology, all the way through those three areas, in my view.
On the other hand, it's still a confrontational question Herman poses, or somebody from the audience, because if we zoom in, so first we went from on-prem to private cloud. Then we went to public cloud or a hybrid way of working. Without choosing it, we're introduced to multi-cloud. That's but still, if you zoom into those pockets, there's always something we leave behind. I'm sure that every bank, every insurance company I worked for, to not harm AMRO anymore, I worked for, always left something behind. There are still mainframes. Name one bank or one insurance company that does not have a mainframe system in the cellar. They do. They still have. So they always leave something behind. So if the question is, when are we done with going towards the cloud? I'm sure that even now in 22, still we leave some legacy behind because we're not daring or courageous enough, or we lost a lot of business logic in people's head to not pick up the mainframes or the legacy systems or the highly complex systems and bring it towards a new state. We always leave something behind.
I fully agree to that, and I think actually the magic is to really finish also locking down and shutting down the legacy part. Yeah. If you keep that running, that's actually your biggest anchor that slows you down in the next step.
Yes.
Is in that respect RPA helpful or not? Does RPA keep legacy, longer alive? Or is it, it's like a lot of people are stepping now into RPA is like, okay, this is, you can have the view like, robotic process automation for the people. That way you said legacy, put RPA, you can, in that respect, you can bring that data towards the cloud. So that might be a step, so an in-between step towards cloud solutions, cloud services. On the other hand, other people say like, oh, the longer we keep these things, the longer we get the legacy systems alive.
Yeah, you need to clean up first.
And for that, we need I agree that you should, but what we see, unfortunately, is you can get a lot of quick wins with RPA. Yeah. So people say, okay, let's put RPA on top, and you've got already what almost looks like a layer of spaghetti underneath, and then you've just added another layer. And this is when you look at how we've actually done transformations, it's not really a lot of the time transformation, it's bolting on something. And I think we see companies that do a lot of M&A, and they acquire a new company, and then you get another big chunk of legacy coming in because they have to manage this way of working, whatever this is, and then there's another one coming in. And so your problems start to exponentiate. And I agree with what you said there, Jonnes. At a certain moment, you've got to try and make an effort to cut this bit out, whatever it is. Yeah. It could have been the best thing 10 years ago. But if it's going to just slow you down, that then becomes the challenge. And I like the way you said about setting up a new bank. Sometimes it's actually easier to start from scratch than it is to try and the transformation that ABN had to go through is huge.
It's huge and it's very complex.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you, so I will try to steer this up, this discussion a little bit, because we lack courage in my perspective. We lack courage, we lack daring profiles that really either make the decision, as you suggested, to, make a construction to just utilize from legacy systems and then let it die out. That's a strategy. Another strategy is really picking it up and entangling it from processes and data and bringing it. Cloud is actually a very good supporting technology that you can use to breaking it down, breaking the data up, or this should be a board discussion. What do we do with legacy? Because year on year, we know that IT departments are good in so many things, but they're not good in decommissioning. And M&As probably is a root cause for having...
I have one participant here, Wouter Smeets. Wouter, former ABN AMRO bank, by the way.
Yeah.
Wouter, can we get you in here? If you unmute, then we can also hear you. That would be nice.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, now we hear you. You mentioned you're now with Atradius, or whatever we want to pronounce it, and you don't have any mainframe anymore. How did that come about? Is that because of you or someone else?
Well, that's not because of me. I'm here only for 2 years now, so I didn't do that. But I'm making the next step with Atradius to move to Azure, and they still have on-premise, but it's not mainframe, luckily.
Well, good. So it's not mainframe, but it is server technology.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, and it's virtualized, so all that. But it's the level of automation is not very high, so it's still a lot of manual work in the infrastructure department, right? Which is a terrible thing. It's an old-fashioned way of working, and so I'm moving everyone as much as possible, every new program, etc., to Azure. So yeah, we are currently building all the landing zones and the cloud competence center and everything properly built. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Wouter. Another remark here from Johan, I see. This is all nice and all introducing nCloud and all these and RPA and AI and ML and low code and no code and whatever. we are confronted with an increasing complexity of tools and tricks and services and partners and so on. Is the next stage of transformation not that we reduce complexity?
I think in every transformation you should try to reduce your complexity. You should also carefully position what you use for what. So if you talk about RPA, I think you should really look at it as a tactical measure to temporarily sort of cover up for your legacy, but you should not confuse that with having an end-state solution in place. And I think positioning your bets and putting them in the right basket, and also putting the right balance in it, I think that should always be part of your of how you go about with your transformation. And your transformation also requires focus. You should not. We've already addressed 25 topics, I think, in these 15 minutes. If you want to bet on all and all equal, then you also have a good setup for disaster. So focus and position the utilization of technology for the right purpose. So RPA for me is not something, especially if you want to manage your sort of boost your legacy systems a little bit. That's only a blanket that you put on top.
Yeah.
If you have it on too long, then it's
I would say
smelly.
If you talk to the RPA providers and the the people that provide solutions for that, they will probably say, it's only a start to become, you know, it's autonomous systems and hyper, you know, hyper automation and those kind of things.
Which
that's
true.
the kind of vision they have that's behind, of course.
Which is true, but it's crucial then that you, in parallel of putting RPA on top of your legacy, that you also make a move from your legacy towards newer
Automation,
technology
yeah.
that can really be leveraged by that next set of visionary RPA stuff.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion those kind of things. I only pose
I do.
questions. You know?
Well, but that's the point. A lot of the times we're automating processes which are 10 years out of date already. And so you automate an out-of-date process, all you get is a faster out-of-date process.
Yeah.
And ideally what you want to look at is what's my process that I need for 2022, 2025, etc. And that's the process that you automate, but that then usually requires even more change. And of course, change is always interesting. We just want to pick up on you on the change thing because it's really, you know, why don't we change? One, we're all very bad at change generally. You know, I'm more than happy for you to change. I'm more than happy for Jonnes, but you know, I'm perfect as I am. Sort of thing. So that's
I want to be changed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The second thing is change is usually a risk. And we're not good at taking risks either, because as you said, you know, you've got to have an appetite for risk. And thirdly, change and risk also means money. So somebody has to pay for this. You know, you get nothing for nothing. And again, when you put all those three into the mix, you've got three massive inhibitors, you know, which are almost exponentiated to slow people down. As I said, I'm more than happy for you to take the risk, but will I take the risk? Will I put that step in? And I think that's another part when we look at transformation and why it potentially takes so long. We're constantly fighting these personal inhibitors, not just the technological inhibitors. I mean, as you said, technology has been around a long time.
Yeah.
So what stops us from
it's inherent to your remark, like people love change but hate to be changed.
Correct.
But hate to be changed is there's an implicit message in there, like if you don't do anything, if you do not innovate or transform or whatever, you will be changed. And then the cost of being changed is much higher probably as leading it.
Correct. Then somebody will be changing. You're right. Then somebody will be changing you rather than you changing.
Exactly.
What you
And
want.
then the costs are unforeseen because then your business model might be screwed or
Yep.
whatever. You find yourself in new situations. Are we?
Yeah, in the example that Wouter gave from Atradius, he had an infrastructure team and he's now entering into cloud with an on-prem environment. So for his colleagues, in the infrastructure team, there's gonna be a lot of resistance to, and also it's gonna be hard for him to really win the hearts and minds because you're touching their daily jobs. So it's only human that they feel like, oh my God, there are people in the front row saying, I wanna be part of the change, and there are people in the being on the other side saying, oh my God, will I be able to work with cloud? How will this just so it is a huge responsibility for Wouter as a leader to take everyone with him on this journey and to help them and empower them to learn new things and to not be afraid, but to actually support them in changing their employability.
Yeah, supporters to use or whatever. There's a poll here and asking about if cloud migration has improved your performance. And actually, there's one person here that says no.
Yeah.
Can we have this person, in our session here? Who said no to this poll?
Dun dun dun.
So if not, because that's an interesting. Most of them is like 92% sort of yes, yeah, it helped improve.
I can imagine there are numerous reasons why
it starts with defining performance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We go to the abstract way again. So I like the one that was against.
No, but I can also say no.
Yeah.
If I look at an Oracle-based database that we drive on-prem and we want to have the same application with that same Oracle database, we see a strong need for additional hardware to meet the same performance. So just looking at it from that angle, it degrades indeed your performance.
Yeah.
If, however, you utilize a SaaS element of the cloud provider that you're in with, then it might be that you actually highly increase your performance.
Yeah, but it's also probably a nice bridge to our next block of topics. The international arena. I mean, we are confronted with more and more European legislation, and you as TCS, you're active in how many countries globally?
About 192 or something.
Yeah, so I don't know how many different legislation systems you need to be active in. I have no clue, but I guess that there's something.
I think there's the way that we've tried to set ourselves up is, so you like I say, we do vertical organizations, so we've got a financial sector then which can really dive deep into financial regulation. Now what that is, I wouldn't know because I sit in a completely different sector, but I know the finance guys do. But what we've always tried to do at TCS is, as you say, you harmonize to a level of commonality. So if there's regulation, whatever it is, let's get those regulations defined in terms of processes, procedures, standard, and SOPs. And therefore, when we roll out projects, when we make offers like the banks, we are then confident that we're covering 95, 99% of all the different anomalies somehow. Yep. And internally, what we do is we have a quarterly audit process. An internal audit is done every 3 months on all the projects, so that we know that we're sticking to whatever these processes we've defined, because that's the only way that we can be sure that we're delivering compliant processes to you. And obviously we do the things like SOX or whatever the regulation is now called. We do the assertion letters, we provide all of that. But it's still all about defining that process for you as an organization and then tailoring it to your individual customer needs, and then making sure that each of these items in every single SOW that we sign off is tracked and traced and monitored and thing. Otherwise, we can't provide that service to our customers to say, no, we are following the standards that you expect of us. And
but this takes a lot of time, effort, and money.
It's continuous, as you said.
Yeah.
All of these journeys are continuous. So any time a new piece of legislation, Schrems 2 being the next one, but you've got things like in the health, you've got HIPAA in the health organisations. You've got PCI, I think, is another credit card standards in that. In telecom, you've got TL 9000, I think, if I remember all of these different ones. In the airline industry, sort of like for Boeing and places like that, a huge raft of regulations. But that's it. That is, for me, is just basically a cost of doing business. If you want to work in these areas, you have to be compliant. Yeah. It's not up for question. The politicians have made the decision that this is now something we do. Okay, so we do it, and rather than, don't like it, basically get on with it and get it done. That way, then you're not talking about, well, is this a good policy? Is it not a good policy? Yeah. Lots of views on that.
But these two come from the financial service sector. Like in the past 10, 15 years, I mean, there's a tremendous new focus on compliance or being compliant, and you will be confronted with, well, you not anymore probably,
no.
Less other regulations, legislation system. But
I'm very happy to hear that I can put in my next contract a 95 to 99% accuracy already. Factor that in from a TCS perspective.
If we don't do it,
I think you're a bit too optimistic in that.
The thing is to try and put the process in place, and then you audit that process.
I understand that part, but especially from a regulation perspective, I think doing this sort of pitching that harmonizing it across industries, across legislation might already set you up for 95 to 99%. I think we're being too optimistic.
Let me rephrase that then. So, because I said we have HIPAA, which has got nothing to do with BFSI, we know we have to follow that standard. So, does the healthcare unit understand that standard? Yes, they do. Do we know when we deliver a service what needs to be in place so that we can help our client be HIPAA compliant? Similarly, when we deliver our service, and this is what I mean about the 95% type of thing, we're covering those specific areas to within as far as we can go. And I say 95 because it'll never be 100 anyway. So that you're never exposed in terms of saying, well, we don't know what HIPAA is. Now, the first time we worked in healthcare and somebody came up with HIPAA, probably didn't have a clue. But we do now, and therefore that's what I'm talking about, the 95%. Specific to the industry in which we work, we are you know, coming out with our solutions, which we know have to be like this. It's like the GDPR stuff, which you said covers all of our EU.
May I interrupt a little bit? Because there's a lot of abbreviations, and there's some people probably not from this sector or whatever.
Okay.
That goes a little bit too far. SREMS was mentioned. Can we explain a little bit, or who can explain what it is and what kind of, and what the consequences are for companies or for people? Because execs are probably liable and these kind of things, and what effect this has for your innovation journey, for example.
I can give it a go.
Yeah, maybe, or this, I don't know. Are you familiar with
definitely
SREMS?
Go for it.
Go for it. Thank you.
Yeah, sort of what is the main thing about SREMS and what, you know?
Mr. Schrems from Austria, it's actually called Schrems 2, as it's his second European court arrest, where he got approved, or I don't know what it's called in legal terms, but that he got his right that without his explicit consent, data that is in the EU region cannot be transferred without him explicitly consenting. And that goes
with enormous consequences for companies.
With enormous, so that means that if you have your data on your Azure cloud, Azure being from Microsoft being a US company, and being set up that they can from the US, of course, enter the data centers in Europe, that's a no-no, unless you have very specific measures in place. If you run your operations partly outside of the EU region, like we do in collaboration with TCS, we run our operations from India, that's not an automatic approved situation. So in that, it's indeed, as a company, we need to ensure that the data of our customers stays within the EU region, or we need to have an explicit consent that it, from the customer that it can be serviced from elsewhere. That's more or less the summary.
Summary. Okay. And what kind of consequences does it have for innovation in companies? I mean, because one of the things I understood is that sort of executives in companies are being liable. Are they rethinking innovation or changing the system or the transformation journey twice or 3 times even? Is it slowing down these kind of things, or because on the one hand it's good, on the other hand it slows down probably other things?
So it had at least half a year impact in our journey to cloud, because we wanted to ensure that we take very good notion of this new arrest. Indeed, especially since it makes executives personally liable if you don't adhere to this new ruling. So that made people at least
a bit scared,
highly convinced that we were going about within the boundaries of the legislation. With having put the right technical measures in place, we are now again advancing on our journey, but it led to at least 6 to 9 months delay in that.
Same thing. Nationality, have you been
with us
because you were in international role there?
Yeah, and it's all before we had this legislation, we had others. I'm not sure if you remember the safe harbor, and there are so many variations on this that the financial services sector, but also other sectors with their security frameworks or new legislation are introduced to. So the good thing is, because it is a tremendous impact on your programs and on your change and on the way you work and on keeping it your record straight. But the good thing is that now executives ask questions, and they didn't do it prior to this by being personally liable. I've always been in the CIO position, so I was liable towards the Dutch National Bank, and I was having these conversations. But now fellow board members are liable and ask questions, where is our data and how did we set it up?
So it did raise the awareness on where we are in terms of data. Because it's not the only data act, and there's many different kinds of data acts in the European environment. Mm-hmm. And
it's a positive effect. I think it starts the dialogue in the boardroom where it wasn't there. It was an IT show, you are liable, and you should have security frameworks, and you should have all the data frameworks in place, and you are the one being liable alone. So I think it's good. Obviously, it always harms the reputation and the image of the brand, but it's good that it's now a distributed level of accountability.
Yeah, but it's from a principle point of view, this is, I think, all right, and from a being a citizen, and you feel protected. But from a practical
it has
point of view,
impact. Yeah,
it has also
it
impact,
has impact.
even for the different consumers with cookie law.
Yeah.
I don't know what are we on the right track in that respect in Europe, like combining the principles with the practicals.
Yeah, it has impact on your architecture also, how you set it up. You have to make changes, so you sometimes have to balance your choices.
It should remain workable for companies and for individuals, and having the right services. Otherwise, you'll be confronted with like, it's all nice with those checks, but it takes hours before filling in a form because you need to do all kinds of check in the back. I don't know what Then it's then the medicine is worse than the illness. How do you say that in English?
Worse than the cure.
The cure is
the cure is worse than the disease.
Yeah.
And so I think indeed it would be a huge improvement if we combine the legislation part with the technology part, and I think that is lagging at this point. That then. If you really, in principle, it's very good that we think about how to protect data and how to go about with the most precious good of a customer. So in principle, that's good. But if you approach it singly from the technology angle, you'll be off. If you approach it only from the legal perspective, you'll also be off. If you marry the two, then you can come up with smart solutions and also with smart legislation that is implementable, that remains customer friendly and still generates customer awareness. I think, tapping back to your example of the cookie law, my guess would be that at least somewhere around 80% of people, especially the younger generation, simply clicks OK and goes on. So it doesn't have an effect there. And then basically the aim you had with the original policy is
not aligned with the practical the application. Yeah,
exactly. I think as you said, the challenge is that technology moves twice as fast, 3 times fast, 10 times faster than legislation. Yeah. Legislation, as I was reading some stuff about some of the legislation in the EU about AI and ML, which is trying to come through. I mean, but we're already on GP3. Everybody's got AI on every device possible. So how, the challenge for legislation is how do you keep up with that? Because the legislation that's going to be passed, which will be there for 30 years on the statute books, is already 10 years out of date by the time it even gets through. And so I think there's in my view, that's the bigger challenge. How do we get legislation faster?
Yeah,
because technology is just pedal to the metal and away you go. Yeah, and that sort of thing.
It's never, but I live maybe probably the wrong person to ask this of, because it's never a technological problem, because everything is doable, nothing is impossible. There are so many ways you can figure out, but in the Netherlands, when the GDPR law came in and we had to comply by 25th of May, the regulators didn't know how to make sure that you were compliant, yes or no, because they were behind. So, it's not a technological problem in my mind. There's
legislation behind
for
developments.
Sure.
That's always
and trends and
you cannot you cannot put legislation that's only in Russia probably. They make legislation before something actually happened before, and that is probably also something, if you look at all these data X and Gaia X, we haven't talked about, like all the regulations and the system changes, and we are trying to create now in Europe, probably is a good thing in the geopolitical arena we find ourselves in these days. I mean, look at what happens with China, look at what happens in the States, look at what happens in Russia. Probably all these kind of things brings a lot of good things together as well in Europe. That might also be one of the conclusions, and that we are a little bit ahead of other parts of the world where we have arranged at least something. But that is something we need to find in the next years. Our last topic, and that's also the real topic before we go to the breakout, is around AI. Are you using AI in ABN AMRO Bank?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's not in my responsibility, but yes, we are looking at it from multiple angles. We have a serious department around it.
What kind of application areas?
We predominantly use it to explore within our data and see what we can find in that. See what we can already derive from all the models that we need to have in place. Sort of use it as an accelerator in that space. But again, it's not my core responsibility today.
Okay.
So
And Artie, you know the stories about being biased in this, whether it's in HR or other application areas, and that's also one of the statements for the discussion a little bit in the breakout. Like, if AI is still biased for the next 3, 4, 5 years, will it hinder companies to step into this in full or wholeheartedly, or will they remain a little bit reluctant?
Yeah, AI is not biased because AI.
No, people that make that great
Exactly.
things.
So I think the way you make use of AI and the way you program to be more agile with the use of and utilizing AI and machine learning and deep learning, I think that should be something that you should have on your mind and be focused on. But AI as such is not biased. Yeah.
Well, sometimes.
So what happened with, for instance,
the results might be biased because it's.
For instance, what happened with Belastingdienst, as an example, has nothing to do with the technology or has nothing to do with the processes. Had to do with people not governing how they set up the systems and not governing AI and not governing their processes, and there's no countervailing power, and that's something that needs a constant focus if you have automated processes in place, in my mind. But AI as such is not biased.
I think AI is definitely not biased. It's indeed the people that are implementing rules in AI.
Exactly.
Okay, well that's
go on. Say that on this, there's a couple of things which we've seen and which we're trying to, obviously I think we're one big litigation case for a predictive model, which then comes out and says, I predicted, and based on any sort of discriminatory factor, so whether it's been gender, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's where you live, sort of thing, we are that close to, to litigation. But what we're not seeing, and this is what we're trying to work with our customers, is did you test for bias before you released your model to production? And this is what you're saying about the governance and sits on top of it. So did I test that this is not a gender-specific recommendation? So if, like in the loan application, if all you're doing is approving sort of like middle-aged men to get a loan, that by definition is bias, in our view anyway. And so the question is, did you test for that before you release this predictive model to the market? And then of course all the good practices around source control, data control, and evidence that no, we did test and it was 50-50. So our target was people over the age of 50, therefore male and female both got the same sort of response when we tested it. But is there evidence? Not everybody collects the evidence that they actually tested it.
There you go, we're here again. Why don't people test more?
Exactly.
A very harmless example, a small insurance company, digital insurance company in the Netherlands in 2009, worked with the assumption and the hypothesis that if you drive a red car, you're probably going to be in an accident more often than a black car or a blue car or whatever. It's harmless, but if they would have remained with that, working with that hypothesis and that assumption, at a certain point of time, it's untrue. So you need to govern it, you need to test it, you need to check your assumptions. I think, and that's how you build for integrity. but AI.
Yeah, but okay, but it's also for the breakout. Like, is it possible at all to not being biased, and how do you set up these testing kind of things? Because that's something for later on. Before Marita, we go there. I see the one person that was not agreeing that cloud was. Brought a better, but this was really on the performance. Because the cloud system was slower than the system before. So it came out as a slower performance question. So
you already gave an example, but there are numerous reasons why it could be the case.
So we give a little bit of clarity about that one. So we find it. So Marita, can we go to the breakouts now? I don't know who you have in mind, but we will find ourselves in a
Beam
group.
us over.
And we will be back in about 20 minutes, and then we go for this, and then I'll ask some, volunteers from the group, and if not, I'll, I point, I suggest a volunteer to hear what you have been discussing in those groups. Okay, see you in a bit. Welcome back. I don't know who's in the other room. Johan, may I ask you? You were probably in the other room, breakout room. What have you been discussing? Jonas, unmute?
Yeah, I had to unmute first.
So
we were in a room with Henny, Honey, op de Engels Henny.
Nee, Honey.
Karel en Rolf. En Honey en Karel werken allebei bij een verschillende overheid gelieerde omgeving. Terwijl Rolf bij TKF werkt, die onder andere de glasvezelkabels produceert, die wij zo langzamerhand allemaal binnen de deuren krijgen. Dat betekende dat we hele verschillende situaties te pakken hadden als het gaat om transformatie. En ik ga niet in detail vertellen hoe dat ging, maar in ieder geval bij Rolf, wat een productiebedrijf is en hoogtechnologische producten levert, sta je aan de vooravond van een, er zal waarschijnlijk weer eens een keer een nieuw ERP-systeem moeten komen, et cetera. En dan kunnen we een moderniseringsslag maken. En dat wordt dan onze transformatie die we door gaan maken, ongetwijfeld. Dat zal ermee te maken hebben. Terwijl de andere twee werken in een omgeving die al semi-cloud is, als ik het goed zeg. Want het Rijk heeft eigen clouds, maar die zijn nog niet zo geweldig gemeenschappelijk. Maar wel dat er daar heel veel rekencentra mee opgedoekt zijn uit mijn hoofd. En dat heeft toch ook wel wat opgeleverd. Maar het is een totaal andere situatie en problematiek dan die bij TKF. En dat was op zich wel weer grappig om van elkaar te horen waar je dan staat.
Maar zat je met een clubje believers, zeg maar, rondom AI?
Believers in de cloud, niet zozeer. Cloud als middel wel. Maar dat werd al bijna als, hoe moet ik dat zeggen? Als een gemeenschappelijk goed. Maar cloud als doel niet.
Okay. We had a different discussion.
But cloud is not an end, it's a means.
A means to
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Sorry, not speaking English. I forgot.
No, not to worry.
No, that's okay. We have been discussing a little bit, like if AI is biased, and what can we do about those kind of things, and if it is hindering organizations to introduce AI solutions. We have been discussing a term called whiteboxing. I think it was also in the chat, it was mentioned by Wouter, that is a way of tackling a number of issues. We have been discussing a little bit why not opening up a little bit more the systems and checks and balances than in a sort of open source, open data kind of open system kind of approach to why that we have a little bit more people or citizens or in another way of other organizations to participate in trying to find more balance in these kind of things and a little bit more democratization of AI systems in that way, and that we feel that maybe there's a key to the next thing. That has been more or less our discussion, I believe. Am I wrong? No?
Yeah.
It was more or less I'm trying to, make a small summary.
Okay.
Thank you, Johan. If there is no further questions from the audience, then I would like to go around the table here and to close the session with a last question. Have we
Herman?
covered? Oh, sorry. Is there a remark?
Herman?
Yeah.
If I can raise one issue, what I notice is that the issues on the table are again very different company by company or department by department. So you can sort of generalize things like AI and all sorts of practices, but every company is in a different state. And some are looking at it, some have already implemented it, and so the differences are pretty big, I have to say.
I believe you're right, and we have been. It was talking about all kinds of trends this afternoon, and touching upon certain critical issues or some hurdles we need to take, and we have heard from Artie, Nationale Nederlanden, and her financial services sector the background and moving towards a new thing, ABN AMRO Bank, like IT transformation and what comes around these kind of things, and from a global service perspective towards all kinds of countries and then legislation. So were probably too many topics to cover in 90 minutes. Nevertheless, one last question for around the table. Is there something you would leave these people with, like focus on a certain trend, or take one of them, or maybe we have forgotten one thing you want to leave us with?
I think we touched on it when it's about change. Change is continuous, whether we like it or not. But how do we actually create the culture of change within ourselves and our own organizations? If we do that, then it doesn't matter if we pick up AI, we pick up cloud, we pick up SaaS, DevOps. We can then make it a success as soon as we want to change. And I think that's always been the challenge that I think we will face.
Okay, a culture of change in an organization, probably if you're able to create that one, then that's the first very good step.
That would be my recommendation.
All right. Do you have something to leave us? What's the message?
I would actually indeed like to respond a little bit to the statement Johan made on behalf of the other group. Yes, I think there are highly different profiles on this table as well as on the digital table. And it's easy to find why I can't learn something from the other person. I think where the magic starts happening is if we start recognizing where we can learn and where we can inspire each other and where we can learn across industries. And I think that would really open up new opportunities. Okay, so the culture of change, find common ground instead of where we divide. Artie, last words.
Very nice suggestions. And I would like to, if I have to say something, build on what Jed said, saying, okay, we have to build a culture of change and unlock the power and empowerment in your organization. And I would want to add on or build on it, saying we need more courageous and inspiring, daring people just going for the change and just taking people along. And if you make a mistake, what really is the worst case scenario? There isn't any. And if you make something, if you have a psychological safety, you will get there. So I want to challenge everyone to just get on with it and start changing small things and then building a chain of success.
So dare to change and then together. Yeah, so that's...
exactly.
Right. Very nice, very nice. Thank you very much. Thank you much for being here. Thank you much for sharing your visions, ideas, and all those kind of things. Thanks for all the people online. Marita will share some more links, I guess, and questions and whatever we can do also after the session. For now, I want to thank everybody, and I look forward for a next session anytime soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.